All right, we're gonna kick things off now that we're a couple minutes past 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Pierce, and I'm an operations associate here at ACP, the Veteran and Active Duty Spouse Mentoring Program. We're very pleased to welcome today to our Wednesday webinar series our guest speaker, Craig Rhinehart, who will be speaking towards how to develop your business idea in 7 proven steps before starting one. This event is being recorded and will be posted to our website in the coming days. So please feel free to utilize the chat box of the presentation to ask questions, engage with one another, and possibly connect on LinkedIn or wherever else that you would please. I will also now note that Craig will be sharing his contact information towards the end of this presentation. So please stay tuned for that and connect with him outside of this discussion. That goes for everyone that is watching the recorded version of this as well. Today, Craig will provide us some insight into small business development, entrepreneurships, marketing, consulting, and more. Craig is a lifelong entrepreneur who started his first business at the age of 14, another at 19, and bought his first company at 22. He has been helping startups, mid-sized and large businesses get into the next level ever since, playing a role in 9 different acquisitions totaling over $2 billion, plus 3 noteworthy turnarounds. Craig has also been an ACP mentor since 2010 and helps our members build their own bigger and better businesses. So with that, I will now turn over to Craig. Take it away, Craig.
Thanks, Matt. Almost everybody's thought about it, and maybe you've even taken some steps towards starting a business. But whatever the case is in your situation, we're going to share a lot today in a short period of time. This is not an end-to-end training class. It's a focus on the most important things. The steps being shared are part of a proven methodology for taking ideas from concept to business reality and long-term success. They're more iterative than sequential, but it's kind of the logical way to present the information. So multi-million-dollar businesses have been born by taking these steps. I know, I was there, and some of them were mine. Today, new business starts are exploding. After 4+ decades of decline, new businesses have gone from 2.5 million in 2010 to well over 4.3 in 2020, a 74% increase in that decade, according to the U.S. Census Bureau's business formation data. Now, of course, some of these are COVID-related opportunists, and many new opportunities definitely emerged from and during and after the pandemic, but there's a bigger movement afoot, quite frankly. Many people have hit pause to reassess their passions and purpose and their future and the paths to achieve it. The Great Resignation is a real thing, and the reasons most often cited for quitting are wanting more from their jobs, better wages, working conditions, more flexibility, voicing decisions, and more. Veterans are leading this movement. Vets are almost twice as likely to start a business, and 10% of existing businesses today in the US are veteran-owned. In 1971, a young Marine veteran, just 2 years removed from combat duty in Vietnam, set up a company that guaranteed overnight delivery of goods between a couple of US cities. The first night's load was 7 packages. That Marine was Fred Smith, and the company is FedEx. From a tiny startup, they now deliver millions of packages every day to the tune of $38 billion a year in revenue, employing almost 300,000 people across the 220 countries that they serve. It's a pretty great example. And if it were, it obviously took a lot to do that over that period of time. But unfortunately, it's not all unicorns and rainbows. 20% of new businesses are going to fail in the first 2 years, and the 5-year failure rate is a full 50%. Tech startups start and fail faster and more often. 3 reasons for this happening, and this will become a theme in today's presentation. Number 1 reason businesses fail is not meeting a market need. Said another way, minimal or no value proposition, just not needed. Can't convince people to buy it. Number 2, cash flow of the business itself, poor financial management or planning. Number 3, flawed business model. Costs are too high and or profits margins are too low. Nothing beats hands-on experience, but you don't really have to be a business shark or superhero to build a successful business. You also don't need a college degree or an MBA or years of climbing the corporate ladder, VC funding, or 15 minutes on Shark Tank. All those things are helpful, but not necessary. Besides a business-worthy idea, you do need purpose, passion, the ability to prioritize or focus, and a problem to solve, ideally all of those, but that's it, right? The ability to keep one eye on the big picture and the other on the execution, results, and details is helpful. And you do need to possess, or at least have somebody on the team with, business and financial skills. This is a must-have, not optional. You'll see why as we go through these 7 steps. Domain credibility or expertise, and tech skills if not a techie. You'll need to know who to take for advice from, use advisors, mentors, and collaborators when you have gaps. So I'd like to introduce you to one of my mentees over the year, Andrew Pilecki, and his wife and business partner, Kristen. They own and operate a wellness business in Vail, Colorado. It started as a side hustle a couple of years ago, and the business is profitable and growing today. They leverage their collective expertise of being an EMT and a nurse for in-home or on-premise delivery of their offerings. No retail storefront like the main competition. They provide wellness and recovery solutions for altitude sickness, immunity boosts, athletic performance, hangover, anti-aging, neuron regeneration, and more. And they add additional value of the convenience and privacy and comfort through premium concierge service delivery. Andrew sees a couple of points that enabled them to launch when they did, and also these same points are an enabler of their early success. Being mobile without a storefront has streamlined operations and lowered overhead costs. Hitting a sweet spot with labor availability has helped scale and profit quickly. They leverage advisors when needed, such as access to medical expertise and business expertise, including taking advantage of what ACP has to offer. They're exploring new ways to grow, expecting increased competition because the market's growing fast too. This is a really great success story, one with a bright future, and I'll refer back to it a couple of times. So why am I talking to you today? Well, a little bit of background on me, and hopefully this will bring some relevance to my comments as we go. I worked in my father's business when I was 14. It was railroad construction. My dad was an entrepreneur in the railroad industry after World War II, but track work wasn't exactly for me. So I went a different way and started my own business when I was 14, and then first real business when I was 19. Bought my first company when I was 22, which I did with a partner, my best friend at the time, Chip. I guess he still is today. He's a good guy. That was a 75-year-old family-owned photographic, computer, and audiovisual systems distributor and retailer, which I eventually sold out to Chip a few years later and went off to pursue other entrepreneurial horizons, starting, growing, fixing, buying, and selling companies. Some of those were in the tech space, including the last 2 of which were acquired by IBM, where I stayed for a few years. All in all, as was mentioned, I had my hand in 3 turnarounds and 9 different acquisitions with over $2 billion changing hands. Through successes and failures, you really learn what works, what doesn't, and what really moves the needle. And I focus on what really moves the needle. In 2017, I took an early retirement package so I could focus on projects personally important to me, including my work with ACP. Today, I'm focused on a new project, building bigger and better businesses, which is all about helping others succeed in business. The website just launched, and it's a little bit of a work in progress. I have ambitious plans for it, and it's really the best way to reach me going forward. I'll be centering my activities from there. As I shared on talking about my own journey, once you start a business, you're going to spend all your time growing and fixing it until you reach the logical end, the conclusion of things, right? So it's sort of a begin with the end in mind kind of thing. Some people, especially investors, are all about the exit, selling the company when it's the most valuable, taking the company public, and so forth, right? Both are really big paydays. And these are viable things to be doing. But there are other practical reasons for you to consider your exit before you get started. You might have a particular expertise that only you can deliver to clients, so it might have a limited lifespan. This might be a lifestyle business for you that you could choose to shut down at any point if your lifestyle needs change. Maybe a family business, or at least that's what you might have in mind, something you can leave as a legacy for your children. None of these, excuse me, are decisions you have to make now, but they are considerations once you start building the business, how you spend money and the things that you do and don't do. The days of the 25 to 50 page written business plan are over. You know, we don't do that anymore. It's just not really, things change too quickly, quite frankly. That said, you still need to do some planning before you start. You need to prove your idea is business worthy to yourself, potentially to others, and that you're the person to bring it to life, and that you have a path towards being a profitable business and it'll stand the test of time. Whatever you're thinking of doing, side hustles are a great way to get started. I'm going to talk about a couple of options for how to get started. My first real business was started in my parents' basement as a side hustle. That's how Andrew and Kristen got started too. Well, not in their parents' basement, but side hustle. So a word on network marketing, because this is totally viable, but there is some controversy with this as a side hustle. Avon, Tupperware, Mary Kay, Amway, Pampered Chef, and yes, the infamous LuLaRoe, which has been in the news recently and on Netflix, were all side hustles. If this is in your frame of thought, right, just do your homework to make sure it's a resale and commission-driven model based on sales to the end customers and not commissions and bonuses that primarily come from the sales of inventory sold to each other through internally recruited sales reps, right? I'm not passing judgment either way, but I am saying there are a lot of pyramid schemes out there. So do your homework before buying in or committing to this type of a business model. Franchising a business is another path. Franchise businesses, think Chick-fil-A, is where you invest in somebody else's brand, business model, and intellectual property in exchange for being able to use them. It's sort of like getting a cookbook and the supply chain that's all set up for you. You still have to fund it and do the work to make it a success, and it's by somebody else's rules. But you're going to pay the franchisor an upfront franchise fee. There's an ongoing percentage of your revenues because you're going to access the ongoing benefit and use of the brand. You're not going to put up a Chick-fil-A on a corner and walk away from it unless you had to. Right? It's definitely a commitment because if you don't perform or follow their rules, right, they have all kinds of ways they can get rid of you when they need to. These are exemplified by Starbucks, McDonald's, and many retail businesses where there's local ownership, but a national or even global brand. But for every Starbucks, there are thousands of franchises that didn't make it. The more successful the brand, the higher the fees, but the risk is lower. The risk of failure is lower. Margins do tend to be on the thin side. You're typically giving away 8% or so right off the top every month. Still, these are a great option depending on your situation and your needs. So you've got an idea, but let's jump into the 7 steps because no one has an ugly baby. Well, almost no one, I guess. Or said another way, everyone loves their own idea. But that's not the same thing as building a business. So we start by objectively assessing to understand your idea as a business opportunity. It might be obvious, but not every good idea makes a good business. A SWOT analysis or other assessment tool really helps to understand the current situation, the key issues, and starting point for this particular journey. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, basically 4 different ways of assessing a topic. And in this case, I prefer to think of strengths as advantages and weaknesses as disadvantages. I just find the broader definition helpful. You're going to want to assess the idea from these 5 points of view: the market for your idea and the associated forces involved. I'm going to go deeper into that. The merits of the idea, its perceived value. Remember, the lack of need is the top reason businesses fail. So we need to be clear on that. Any existing technology that the idea or potential innovation is based on. This includes intellectual property valuable enough to be protected by patent, copyright, or trademark. 4, can an operational foundation and financing be built around the idea so that it can become a successful business? And lastly, and equally as important as any of these, are you. What you bring to the table, like personal expertise, contacts, and so forth. Done right, you now have a roadmap for the rest of the steps. It's a good way to get directionally focused. You're going to want to run your idea and the findings from this by friends, colleagues, or anyone who has a relevant point of view about it before getting too bought into it. And just like with an ugly baby, remember that people close to you won't always tell you what they really think. They'll tend to tell you what they think you want to hear. More about that in step 7. So like a Persian bazaar, the market can be crazy and contain certain customs and practices. There are chaotic and disruptive external forces at work with many influencing factors that can help and hinder your chances of success. You can't control any of this. So your job here in step 2 is to first understand the market so that you can navigate it to your advantage and ultimately profit from it. So you start with the market itself, the size and segments of the addressable market, how fast it's growing, identify the relevant trends, timing, and so forth. You want to identify allies and market influences, potential partners, thought leaders, associations, and analysts. What other relevant factors exist? Maybe industry standards, regulations, or pending legislation. You want to understand customer demographics and the subset that is ideal for your idea. Consider how you will attract your ideal customers and how you'll funnel them on a journey from suspect to prospect to customer and hopefully repeat customer. Ultimately, you must come to know these things, whether friend or foe, and how to deal with them when needed. This includes how to respond when something disruptive is happening, like a new tech innovation, or dealing with a load of inventory that gets stuck in the Suez Canal, right? Or a pandemic, right? Stuff is going to happen. You need to be prepared for it. The market helps to understand these things. And then there's competition. Everybody's hot button. Who will your direct and indirect competition be, and how do you win against it? In Andrew's case, he has direct competition from retail locations that offer the same kinds of IV treatments he does. He also competes indirectly against other wellness services like massages and spa treatments. So he's got to differentiate and find advantages against those things. If you don't think you will have competition, you're probably fooling yourself. Either that or you don't have a market at all. You can't be both. Don't be afraid of competition. They ultimately represent the key for how you're going to deliver differentiated value and increase profits, which we'll cover in step 4. Some people think all it takes is a good idea and an understanding of the market, and we're off to the races. If we can just capture 5% of this billion-dollar market, we'll be a $50 million company in no time. Easy peasy. That couldn't be more wrong. So let's dig into some of these forces and explain why. Markets have timing components. From the work of Everett Rogers and others, we know that there's a proven model for how markets behave when adopting new offerings. Markets grow over time. Each one has an apex. It will eventually shrink or die unless reborn as something else. You don't have to be first to market, but you do have to be there in time to capitalize on the growth on the way up before it reaches the apex and begins to really saturate. Half of the available market will buy before it reaches the apex. TAM and SAM. You have to define this is where the industry definitions are pretty lame, because you have to really define these for your own business. They become measurement points of how well you're doing to measure your market share and your position in the market. Become familiar with SIC or SIC codes and NAICS code definitions. Every business, by the way, there'll be a resource page at the end. Every business and industry in the US is classified by these. This is sort of 101 for how to size a market. TAM, or total available market, has to be defined. SAM has several definitions. I use served addressable market. SAM is a subset of TAM. Right? Think about it, right? It's the part that you can address, right? You'll never be able to address everyone in the TAM. Once defined, SAM becomes your portion of the market or the portion of the market that you can effectively serve, right? If you're a gas station in Washington, D.C., you're not going to be selling gas to people who live in Chicago. So start by defining and sizing the TAM. Then subtract any unaddressable industries, segments, locations, size of company issues, and any use cases that you can't serve to reach your SAM. From there, you're going to develop an ideal customer profile or criteria. Let's take Andrew's business as an example, right? It's not granular enough to say, let's target everybody in Vail who might get sick. That doesn't cut it because he's wellness. By understanding his market, he knows that he's in a high-end tourist location, and serving tourists is also part of his SAM. He also serves the local citizens of Vail. Vail is a popular vacation and wedding destination with seasonal peaks, so his ideal customer has timing consideration and some unique selling opportunities for group sales. Once you understand the needs of your ideal customer and when they need you, you just need to convince them to buy from you. assuming they have awareness of your offerings and value. And there's a lot of big assumptions in there, right? Convincing them to buy from you and assuming they have awareness of you and what you're doing. More on this in step 4, but it's important to understand here that that connection happens in one of two ways. Proactively is when you find them, right? Hopefully at the right point in time, but often not, through outreach or marketing campaigns that are designed to attract and acquire new customers. Reactively is when they find you on their terms and certainly when they need your capabilities. This is typically from referrals or search. By far, this is the most affordable way to do marketing and why search engine optimization or SEO is such a hot area. If you search on IV therapy Vail, you can guess who comes up first. Step 3 is about considering the resources necessary to build a functioning business around your idea. Have you given any thought to how you're going to get your venture off the ground? You're going to need resources and some infrastructure to make your idea happen. Think of this as your business foundation. It's a necessity. You will almost certainly need some basic business tools like a website, computers, and accounting software to function and be legit being key. It might be obvious, but a business licenses, bank accounts, legal structure, and some startup capital are just the beginning. Whether you see this as a side hustle or a full-blown venture, you'll need the right resources at the right time to make sales grow and eventually succeed. So I know this next little bit here is right after lunch. Try not to go to sleep on me here because this is nap material, but don't get hung up on the details of this either because we're still at the concept level. This is, we're going into business model. You're going to need to spend money in 3 ways to start up and operate the business in an ongoing fashion, whether you make any sales or not. This concept is referred to as OPEX or operating expenses, include things like rent, insurance, phone bills, administrative salaries, legal and accounting, stuff you need to keep the doors open, whether you're making sales or not. You want to keep this to a minimum, especially until you break even. This is part of the reason that garage styles startups are so popular. Again, my first business was from my parents' basement. Cost of goods sold are variable and only apply when something is sold. Referred to as COGS, they include manufacturing costs, service labor delivery, landed shipping costs, sales commissions and stuff, things that only get incurred when you make a sale. You'll likely have to pay for inventory ahead of time, right? So why this is a big deal. If you could pay for it when you incurred it, that'd be something else. But a lot of this has to be ready to go when you make a sale, which brings up the importance of having enough cash flow and the number 2 reason that businesses fail. Lastly, you're going to need to spend money to acquire and retain customers. CAC refers to your cost to acquire a customer. These funds are spent on advertising, direct marketing, SEO, as I alluded to earlier. It's a key metric and something every investor will ask you about. As you model out the business, you're going to need to calculate some other closely aligned numbers like sales volume, average order value, customer lifetime value, and so on. Also a cash flow consideration. Probably starting to make a little more sense why I said that access to financial skills are pretty important. Pro tip, accountants, if you're thinking that's what you need, are historians. They are not forward-looking prognosticators, right? You need somebody on a team that's going to know the number and is in charge of the financial roadmap for where you're going to go and what's it going to take. Bootstrapping is fine, but do it the right way and don't cut the wrong corners. You need things like legal structure protection, E&O insurance for some services business, all these things to protect you from worst case level mistakes. Don't forget to consider what your payment policies and practices will be too, because this impacts cash flow. You're going to turn all this stuff into a pro forma forward-looking set of projections, right? Which is the basis for your business model. You don't want your journey to end too soon by not having the right resources. So this one's my favorite part. In simple terms, will people or businesses give you money in exchange for what you're planning to do or offer? Many new businesses are based on improving an existing way of doing something or solving some problem in a compelling new way, a better mousetrap, if you will. But step 4, it's really more than just that, right? It brings in the concept of differentiation and value. You need to clearly understand what makes your idea valuable, to whom and when. Is your idea unique? Probably not. So it better be differentiated somehow from competing offerings, as in being better, faster, cheaper, healthier, maybe your location, something else. Not all forms of value are equal, hence the impact qualifier in the statement. If you're driving at night in a rural area without a gas station around and your fuel gauge is on empty, are you going to spend a lot of time looking around for the lowest price gasoline, or are you going to more likely pull into the first place you come across? In this case, buying gasoline when you really need it has higher impact and benefit to you as the customer. You're less sensitive to the price. So the location of the gas station has value to you, right? Same concept. So metaphorically speaking, you want your business to be the gas station within reach when your customers are running out of gas. That's kind of the concept here, right? Or you want to be able to provide on-premise IV therapy hangover remedies the day of the wedding, right after the bachelor party from the night before. Look for customer opportunity dynamics where your value is strong and differentiated. How strong is your advantage and how long will that last? If you're not getting this or stuck on this, think in terms of problems and solutions. Frame your idea so that it helps meet a need and therefore creates a form of value. Lowering costs, creating new revenue streams, reducing risks, saving lives, improving efficiency are all good forms of value and help address the associated problems or needs, especially in B2B, business to business concepts. B2C concepts can also appeal to human wants or sentimentality, right? Think when disposable income is available, that is. It's pretty well known that people are less sensitive to price when it comes to weddings, newborns, and funerals. Nostalgic, collectible, memorabilia items, vacations, sports betting, board games all fall into the wants category. This is a softer form of value, equally as legit, but it's softer. Even softer are businesses based on fads that can come in and out of style. Remember the pet rock, space pen, or fidget spinners, right? Frivolous purchases will disappear when times get tough. You want harder, ideally, you'd want harder value over softer value. Pro tip, don't take the easy way out here. This is hard, right? If you're simply reselling somebody else's products and not adding enough value or your own secret sauce to them, you're likely going to face competitive margin pressures and cash flow challenges. Always happens. Commodity businesses have weaker value props as a general rule. Reminds us that the number 3 reason is low margins. So here's a little template that I use when working through this. Fill in the blanks format works for both product and services concepts. Sorry for the garish colors, but it reinforces that you're pulling in content from all of these different steps together. Reminds me of the fun word game Mad Libs for some reason. So who is this example? And we'll see who's the first one to type it into the chat stream is. For mid-market and upscale consumers who are energy conscious and want a safer driving experience with reduced driving costs, the blank product is an electric vehicle that is safe, planet-friendly, with the lowest possible operating costs. Unlike traditional gasoline-powered automobiles, the blank product has a modern, safe design, can be charged at home, has the cleanest available power source, and a nationwide charging network, which are durable competitive advantages well into the future because traditional vehicle manufacturers cannot easily retrofit an outmoded 100-year-plus combustion engine design, existing supply chains, manufacturing processes, or build out competing charging networks fast enough or at all. We get hold the answer till the, I'll give you the answer, but I'll be curious to see if we had any answers. The answer is Tesla. And there was a lot in there, but they have a lot of advantages, quite frankly, for what they're trying to do. It's a big play. This might look easy, but it's really not, especially the second sentence. You'll probably have to work hard at this, but the stronger you make this, the stronger your business will be. Your chances of success, especially over time, are exponentially increased if this is strong. It's all part of developing a solid business strategy. So we'll move away from company and offering value and into building the business part of it. Deciding to be a product or service-based business was the start of this. Now we're going to link that to the supply side and the customer side. I refer to it as a value chain because every step or every link represents an opportunity to add value in that whole chain by doing something innovative that competitors aren't. On the supply side, How and where will your manufacturers be sourced? I'm sorry. How and where will the products be sourced and manufactured? What are the landed costs going to be? How will they be warehoused, inventoried, managed, and shipped from? Is your product digital and you don't need any of that? If services, will you use contractors? How will you ensure quality of service and have enough bench strength? Your paths to market are another important decision, a way to potentially advantage yourself. How are you going to acquire and retain customers? Will you sell direct? Is it a face-to-face sale or e-commerce, retail, Amazon, Etsy? Will you use SEO or traditional approaches? How will you compensate your sellers, your dealers, your affiliates, and your influencers, right? These are all things that have to be worked through. Once an order is received, how will you process it, distribute, ship, and deliver it? You don't only have to look at what Amazon has done to the retail market, selling the same products as bookstores and other retailers like department stores to the exact same people, just in a different way, to understand the impact and possibilities from these decisions. If you don't know the history of Amazon, they started by reselling books with a vision towards selling everything A to Z. They have subsequently moved into or invaded the warehousing and distribution parts of the value chain through their FBA fulfillment program. They disrupted digital delivery of products and services through Amazon Web Services and Kindle, all while creating an army of affiliate marketers. And if you haven't spotted it yet, they're busy investing in planes, trucks, and drones to further innovate and disrupt the packaging delivery of goods. So look out, Postal Service, UPS, and FedEx. All of these things happen because they examined every step and every linkage in their value chain, and they expanded into the adjacencies that made sense for them, starting with their initial core value. You should be thinking this way too. Amazon set the bar pretty high, but like them, there will be plenty of adjacencies to your value chain that will represent value add and innovation opportunities. Here's another template to do the same thing as before, but the reason to write this out is it forces you to write down and make sure you cover all the things that are necessary to pull this together. Once you do this, you've really framed out a very basic business model. Don't worry, you're not committing to it yet. It's going to change as you evolve into a plan and projections as you fill in the remaining details. The great philosopher Yogi Berra once said, if you don't know where you're going, you might wind up someplace else. And so step 6 is how you're going to go from where you are today to where you want to be in 1, 3, 5 more years. You want to think about this as phases or big chunks. Try to characterize what the business will look like in each of the major phases. I know this is about as accurate or fun as crystal ball gazing, but you got to do something. But by now, you'll have a sense of how to plan and make sales, right? Typically modeled out by price and quantity or P times Q. We're going to take that out a little further. This whole topic probably warrants a separate webinar. So for now, we're going to begin with the end in mind and figure out what goes in the middle. As a general rule, it's critical to get out of the hole and stop burning cash. So the place to start is a startup phase that gets you to break-even point. Yes, I know Amazon lost money for nearly 10 years, but they were big game hunting and were playing the game by a different set of rules, and they had the cash to sustain it. You probably don't. After that, it's fairly arbitrary. Maybe a growth phase to 5 million and then another one to 20 and so on. So there's a methodology for how you do this here. You're going to want to use assumptions and dependencies, or if-then statements, as a way to understand the possibilities and the milestones. You use by statements as a way to align that to timeframes and financial sales and operational issues. If, in order to be the following size and have the following characteristics, then this set of things must happen and be in place by this date or time frame. And it's that simple, right? And you got to figure that out. Once you've got a sense, a more defined sense like that of what the phases are and the milestones to guide you, then you can really start working on numbers. It will change, but it's supposed to. Pro tip, market apex timing aligns to this too. The market and your SAM won't expand forever. You may need to add products or features or options that increase revenue and market share along the way so that this journey is what it needs to be, especially if it's a tech-centric solution. Don't forget to, this is important, don't forget to plan for unexpected disruptions, some problems, and a few wrong turns. They're going to happen. It's the most common mistake made by entrepreneurs is to assume everything will go perfectly. Building some contingency funds and plans. Write it all down, because again, you're going to turn this into some forward-looking projections. But as the expert of your own idea, no one expects you to be able to perfectly predict the future, right? So it's going to be wrong, but it's a starting point, right? They will expect you to have some degree of informed intuition about what can happen and what it will take to get there. Step 7 assumes you've got enough detail and a semblance of a plan to get the remaining feedback, and you can refine the plan so you ultimately get to a decision point of pressing go or not. You want people to poke holes in your idea at this stage so you can get to that decision point. There's a best practice out there that says go talk to 100 people, particularly on the value prop of the idea itself. The time to find out that you have a stinker on your hands, no matter how much you like it, is not after you've invested thousands in it. Right? Consider using 3D printed prototypes to get your idea across. If it's a software-based solution, you want early feedback on it, maybe on the user experience through HTML mockups or wireframes, because your MVP is still a ways off. That's a minimally viable product for the non-techies in the audience. There's a feedback model from the Harvard Grad School of Business called the ladder of feedback. You might consider as a guide on this, or more formal surveys. Talking to prospective customers is always a great idea. Industry insiders, others who might see it from a different angle than you do. Ultimately, you want objective feedback here. And even though all feedback is good, whether positive or negative, don't be discouraged when you hear negative feedback or get too excited when you hear positive. You're going to want to hear both. Stay objective, optimistic, and keep pushing it forward if you believe in it. So here's a set of resources, and these will be available when we post the slides on this. First thing to do is to go to my website, buildingbiggerbetterbusinesses.com, one word, and subscribe, assuming you got value from this today. My email is craig@rhinehart.com in case of real emergency. If you need a sanity check, reach out to me on LinkedIn or the website, and we'll see if we can help. There are numerous entrepreneurial, I'm getting tongue-tied now. There are numerous entrepreneurship communities, business plan competitions, even veteran advantaged resources to secure validation, get some additional expert input and advice on what you're doing. I offer something called 8-minute pitch. It's an idea pitch session that I typically charge for. It's a free service to ACP members. There are limited slots though, so you can email me directly about that. And of course, ACP has a lot of great resources in this whole area, right? There's a reason that I've been associated with the organization going on 12 years now. So with that, Matt, I guess we're going to do some Q&A, and there's my website up on the screen if you're needing to write it down or can't get the PDF. So I'll turn it over to you, Matt, for next steps.
Fantastic, Craig. Thank you so much. And just so everyone has another opportunity to write it down, would you mind just restating your email one more time?
Yes, it's craig@rhinehart.com, CRAIG@RHINEHART.
Fantastic. And if everyone just wants to play it safe, if you want to put your email in the chat box, I'll go ahead and note those, and I can send you more information in the PowerPoint directly after this conversation Q&A section. But just want to say thank you again, Craig. That was fantastic. And I'm sure everyone will walk away from this webinar with more confidence as they explore their own business plans. And I'm sure I wasn't the only one that appreciated the case examples. One thing in particular that stood out was what veterans specifically bring to the table and the success that they have had in the past and presently do. As you noted with your example with Andrew, the success he's had, but also the founder of FedEx. And this is what ACB can provide as a mentorship, specific insight in whether it's small business or something specific within small business. And Craig in particular has helped 12 plus mentees in our program find success. So we cannot thank him enough for his experience in the past and sharing this information with us today. So the first question, and we have around 15 minutes for questions. So the first one is whether it's a mentor, business partner, or influential person that you can trust and provides insight to you. When do you know it's the point to officially begin the business, to open the doors, to make it public, rather than do more planning, do more funding, do more waiting for the proper time, especially in light of COVID?
Yeah, well, that's $1 million question.
Yeah.
Right. There's paralysis by analysis. You can plan these things forever and never start one. I think it comes down to if you've got a plan and you can answer all the kinds of questions that I covered here today, and you've got the resources so that you don't fall victim to those 3 primary ways that businesses fail. You got the purpose and the passion for this business, right? Those things I started with. Once you've got, you've got all those things, then go, right? I mean, the other thing that factors into this is the market timing. You don't want to think and plan so long that you miss, the right phases of the market. One of the things I didn't cover is, right, you need to get in when the market's on the rise, because if you don't, the latter stages of the market, if you're not already relevant by the time the market reaches the peak, you're not going to be relevant on the decline. There's plenty of profit to be made on the decline, but the leaders will already be established and very difficult to displace. So if the timing's right and you're confident enough in what you're doing, go.
Thank you. So then that leads into the next question. How do you know when a market is saturated or when it's ripe for a new business to be started?
Well, that goes back, I think, to step 4, right? If you first off, the saturation thing has to do with timing and size and available market, that kind of thing, and what you can address. The how do you know? Really, the part of that answer is if you've got something that is a better way of doing something or solves some problem, it really doesn't matter where the market is, right? Value is value. People will spend money on something that's valuable no matter when, right? The behavior patterns are different in the early market versus the latter market, but that the how money gets spent and the decisions of why they spend it and with whom change over time. But nothing beats having offering compelling value that people want to line up to get from you. That's what you're after here. That's the most important thing.
I believe that's an excellent point. So then next, what industries do you think have the most opportunities for veteran entrepreneurs in particular, specifically with the skill sets that they bring from the military?
Yeah, I think the question is self-answering. It depends on the veteran skill set. I mean, I don't think there's a set of industries that necessarily are better suited because one is a veteran. Maybe it might lend itself to contractors, and particularly around the DC area where I am, right? There's a whole community of and an appetite for people with that kind of experience. But in the end, I think and that's a contributing factor, but I think it's more important about your passion, your purpose, and what you want to do and what you have a desire to do. Being in the military for some period of time doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, or that you desire to do a certain set of things. It might, or you could be Fred Smith and go a different way and start a business in a completely new area. I mean, he saw an opportunity to deliver a type of service that had never been delivered before. I mean, people have been shipping stuff for centuries, right? Horse and wagon, trains, ships, whatever. But people didn't guarantee overnight delivery. And that guy did. And you saw what he did with that one. And people needed that. Before that, that need was not being met. Now it was being met. And now, that business is as strong as ever, Amazon notwithstanding, decades later.
So then I think the next thing that's natural with any business and any idea, you can have the plan, you can have the funding, but it's the marketing, it's knowing how to get it out there. So outside of just the basic of maybe Facebook marketing or on Yelp or something, is there an efficient and strategical way to go about social media marketing in today's day and age?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would, so I have 2 thoughts on this. One is, right, there are a lot of charlatans out there offering advice on how to do marketing, snake oil salesmen, if you will, who they're all trying to capture you in, and then they want to sell you some service for how they're going to do that. And some of those things are maybe fine, and some that I've seen maybe not so fine. But I think the concept that you want to, I'll give you two concepts. One is, right, that customers have a need that you're trying to address, right? So how do you get their attention so that they pay attention to you? What's your hook or your message to them so that a potential relationship is formed? Because remember, it's suspect to prospect to customer is sort of how you're going to move them along, right? So you need a way to get their attention. You need a way to demonstrate your value to them so that ultimately they buy from you, which instead of buying from somebody else. So to the effectiveness of how you do that, whether you're doing Google ad placement or whether you're running email campaigns or sending out direct mail pieces, the more effective you are at finding out where these people congregate, where's their water cooler, when is it they're more likely to need your service on their journey, that's when you want to interrupt them with your message of how you can help, assuming they're in need, and then ultimately attract them to you. That's the key to marketing, because the old school marketing was you interrupt everybody with telesales or direct mail, right? Nobody wants to deal with that, but on occasion, right, one of those things you look at and you go, oh, I might need some steaks for the holidays. Maybe I should call Omaha Steaks, right, when you get a direct mail piece. So what is your hook or your value? How do you get it in front of the right people? How do you attract them to you? And how do you make sure they buy from you versus somebody else? You don't want to generate a bunch of interest and then have them go to the competitor.
And once again, if you do want me to personally send the presentation to you, put your email in the chat. And a question that's appeared a couple times pre-submitted, but also in the chat is, how do you achieve VOSB certification when you have investors? I'm sorry, I don't know that abbreviation.
What is the acronym again?
VOSB. Or DVSOB.
There may be some official certification or not. I don't know enough about DVOSB to say anything more than that. I'm sure if you Google it, there's some sort of official set of criteria and certification that you have to meet before you can make the claim that you are one.
Okay, great. And then next, on to the budgeting and funding. How do you budget for success, and what are the best ways to gain capital?
Well, on the how do you budget for success, the answer is it depends.
Yeah.
It depends on the type of business, right? If you don't have inventory, or you're going to sell ebooks and your inventory is all digital, then you don't have to budget for a lot of things. You don't have to budget for warehouses and these kinds of things, because everything's digital. You're just going to email people or ship or let them download from the cloud, right? So it's a different cost infrastructure. That's why I outlined the 3 different types of costs that you're going to spend money on. So it depends is the answer. There are some business models that are more investment-wise attractive from what it costs to get off the ground kind of thing. If you're going to go in the business of, shipping products from warehouses, and you're going to have to buy 10,000 of something before you can sell your first one, that's pretty costly. And then as far as raising money goes, just a side comment on that. They're going to look at all the stuff I talked about today, but I want to be clear on this, right? Investors, at least maybe other than your friends and family, are not going to invest in an idea or a PowerPoint, right? Not as a general rule. That's extremely rare when that happens, right? Because they know that the markets are growing. They're going to know more about the markets than you do when you pitch them. And they're going to have a sense of those markets because they've done other deals in those markets. And they don't invest in ideas. They're going to invest in you and your team. They're going to invest in the traction you have with your idea. How many have you sold? What's the traction? What's the momentum? Are you executing your plan? This kind of stuff. They'll invest in the value and traction of what you're doing and whether they see a future market around it. But they generally don't invest in ideas. Now, where that might be different is maybe in a franchise situation where you need capital to get it going, and but in effect, it's the same thing, because they're not investing in your decision to buy a franchise. They're investing in the legitimacy of the franchise and you and your ability to operate within that set of rules. So, fundraising, there's probably a whole separate webcast on how to raise money for businesses, but you will You will need money to get started, and then as the thing grows, you're going to need additional money or growth capital. Very difficult to grow from operating profits.
And I think that's an excellent segue into what we can make the last question. So it's something you've really noted on, and just the skill sets that mentors do, or that veterans do bring to the table in any business, any field, whatever it might be. But from your perspective, from someone that could be providing money or that has mentored countless individuals, what do you believe speaks most to an investor about a military veteran? Because half the time it's just translating the skills, responsibilities, the hardships that they've dealt with and overcome in theater or working on an assignment or something that's time sensitive. So is there a couple terms, a couple just broad phrases that really boost your confidence when speaking to a veteran or active duty spouse?
Yeah. So the way to think about that experience is it's a major advantage, but it's not a free pass. Everything I said on this thing today is still relevant, including the experience. If you remember the 5 things, the experience you bring to the table, right? So investors get and totally have appreciation for the discipline, the structure, the all of the typical attributes that one associates with military experience, right? Perform under pressure, right? All of those kinds of things are huge advantages, absolutely huge advantages, but not to the exclusion of all the other stuff. Because at the end of the day, investors care about getting a return on their investment first, second, third, fourth, and fifth foremost, right? That's the reason they're investing. They're not investing because they're good guys. They're investing because they want a return on their investment. And they see that as those are huge ticks in the plus column, but they're not to the exclusion of all the other things.
Great. Well, fantastic. And thank you again, Craig, for presenting and outlining these. I feel like I myself have learned a lot about not just veterans and active duty spouses, but how prepared they are, but the well outlined 7 business steps you presented. I'm sure our ACP participants, veterans, active duty spouses, even some mentors are in on this call, have learned more, and this will give them the boost and confidence required to take the business plan from an idea to reality. I wish we could speak longer, but this is all the time we have for today. So thank you again, Craig, for joining us, creating this amazing PowerPoint. And we love having you. Please do not forget to connect with Craig with the information he provided on his slideshow if you're watching this at a later date. And stay tuned for future events. Thank you to everyone in our audience for joining us. And this will once again be posted on our website in the coming days. And please join our next session. Have a great afternoon, morning, or evening. Bye-bye.
When a soldier comes home from across the sea, tears are shed by their family, tears of joy that they're safe from harm and once again in loved one's arms. When a soldier comes home from their battles fought, tears are shed for fallen friends they've lost, touched and torn by what they have seen, unsure what their new lives will be. They give so much when duty calls, in peace or war they serve us all. Compassion and patience, the promise of hope, that's what we give when a soldier comes home. Ooh. When a soldier comes